Welcome back to our channel where we provide updates and undisclosed narratives on Catherine, Princess of Wales and her royal family. We provide you with the exciting news: King Charles makes a shocked move after catching Camilla's betrayal. A knowledgeable source asserts that King Charles has been facing a challenging situation because of Camilla's prolonged treachery against him. This revelation brings King Charles to tears and indicates a substantial change over Camilla's betrayal. The Crown in Crisis. An examination of betrayal. Within Buckingham Palace, the shepherd's promise of peace on earth has disseminated humanity's hope across all faiths and beliefs. It advocates initiating harmony in the most cherished realms, home and heart. What happens when a nuanced, terrible betrayal from inside disrupts such tranquility? What happens when a king, an emblem of national stability, succumbs inside the hallowed, tranquil confines of his palace? Prior to his ascent, King Charles III had experienced the burden of the throne. Following a lifetime of preparation, every motion and trait of his was scrutinized by an attentive audience. He had accountability and a somber resolve. The ultimate betrayal, a clandestine liaison between his wife Queen Camilla and a man he regarded as a staff member, confidant, and friend, reduced him to despair at the twilight of his life, at the pinnacle of his royal aspirations. A late-night message sent to the wrong phone initiated a sequence of humiliation, deception, and sorrow. This dispute intertwined personal and public matters and jeopardized the monarchy's stability. During the most tumultuous period of his reign, King Charles confronted the disintegration of his personal life and the gravest threat to his throne: midnight treachery. In King Charles's private study at Buckingham Palace, the grandfather clock chimed midnight, its profound tones marking the conclusion of a day filled with rigorous state meetings and an uncomfortable night. Fatigue enveloped him. Initially, he believed it was his phone. For their anniversary, Camilla commissioned royal blue leather covers for the two devices, which were indistinguishable in the dim lamplight. Upon reflection, this seemed severe and intentional. His thumb faltered when unlocking the screen, hindering his ability to access the morning briefing schedule. He observed Camilla's interface rather than his own. He acknowledged his mistake at the appearance of a notice on the screen. The message originated from a contact labeled A, accompanied by a little heart emoji. Charles, fatigued from perusing official papers, scrutinized the text that would irrevocably alter his marriage reign and existence in only moments. "I miss you profoundly this evening. Shall we meet at the same time tomorrow? The usual location is replete with memories, possibly the rose garden before morning prior to His Majesty's daily regimen." It believed the earth was inclined. Charles promptly refuted in a state of despair. A misunderstanding. A uniquely articulated innocuous correspondence to a friend. Nevertheless, the intimate tone, covert suggestion of a new meeting location, and disconcertingly nonchalant reference to evading him, His Majesty implied something far more sinister. The message indicated familiarity with his personal schedule, often exclusive to top domestic staff. He was unable to cease trembling his hands while perusing the message history. His revelation elicited a gasp. The incident was well documented. He uncovered months and years of correspondence that disclosed an emotional and sexual connection conducted boldly underneath his residence. The writings depicted clandestine encounters in seldom utilized royal drawing rooms, meticulously orchestrated meetings aligned with his official duties, and most poignantly, a mutual concealed lexicon of private humor and subtle references. The timestamp of the first recorded message made Charles weak at the knees. 2 years and 3 months beforehand. It began weeks subsequent to his coronation, the zenith of his existence. He mostly depended on Camilla and his most trusted aides to adjust to the burdens of the throne, although this betrayal was growing in the shadows of his paramount accomplishment. While scrolling, his mind accelerated, linking apparently disparate data via discernible patterns. Camilla's increasing affection for solitary morning strolls in the palace. Her peculiar, private appointments were never reflected on a calendar. Certain staff personnel seemed to possess an innate understanding of her preferences and schedules. Elements that formerly suggested a well-functioning royal service apparatus have now become the framework of a significant deception. Charles' last contact before the screen turned blank was a response from Camilla that was 3 hours old. Tomorrow seemed always far. Charles makes no assumptions. He has been very occupied lately, leading me to question if he would notice my absence." The callousness of her comments and the deliberate neglect of their shared existence shattered him. He delicately positioned the phone on his mahogany desk as if it were volatile. When personal grief intertwined with institutional duty, his melancholic rule seemed more burdensome than ever. He was a deceived partner and a sovereign whose private domain had been infringed upon. Charles acknowledged with unsettling clarity that this disclosure would have extensive consequences beyond his own suffering. Dawn Rose Garden. Sleep became unattainable. Charles slept in his luxurious four-poster bed next to Camilla, attuned to her calm, rhythmic breathing while his mind surged with insights and implications. Each gentle sigh from the woman beside him suddenly became derisive. Each languid movement seemed to be a component of her elaborate deception. The Queen Consort of the United Kingdom, who peacefully slumbered beside him, led a concurrent life as he committed himself to becoming an exemplary husband and monarch. Charles stirred softly as dawn illuminated the London sky in shades of gray and pink. He donned somber, unadorned clothing and positioned himself at his study window, which had a view of the East Terrace and the well-tended rose garden. The early morning fog adhered to hedgerows and late-blooming rose petals, producing a surreal visual. Despite the tranquility of the castle, his heart beat tumultuously inside his chest. He sought to address the betrayal that was undermining his existence. A self-assured, identifiable individual emerged from a side lane at around 6:15 a.m. Charles saw his trust disintegrate. His chief private secretary, Alexander Hartwell, was readily identifiable. He was panting from the physical trauma. Hartwell was more than only an employee. He served as Charles's administrative and logistical support. Hartwell, who had served the royal family for more than 15 years, assisted Charles in managing the tumultuous transition after Queen Elizabeth II's death. He was there for every pivotal choice, personal family event, and critical political argument. Charles divulged personal and royal confidences to him. Alexander Hartwell comprehended the king's itinerary, political perspectives, anxieties over his maternal legacy, and profound fears. The transgression seemed like a fraternal betrayal. Upon Camilla's appearance moments later, in an unfamiliar, flowing silk morning gown, Charles gazed in humiliation. The lovers' reunion was kind and familiar, devoid of remorse. They danced with the casual grace of a pair used to such mornings, their movements conveying profound and practiced devotion. Their conversation was inaudible to Charles. However, their body language conveyed fervor and need. No informal affair or momentary lapse of judgment. They feigned affection while deceiving the one who placed his faith in them. Emotional betrayal is in some respects more painful than physical adultery. Charles saw the unsettling complexities of their tradecraft while sustaining his meticulous examination. Hartwell was aware of the specific garden pathways that the palace's many security cameras overlooked. Camilla navigated the clandestine route with the poise of one who has traversed it often. Their liaison was orchestrated at his house, a representation of the nation's past using his trust and customary practices as a facade. Charles had profound heartbreak at seeing Hartwell draw Camilla near and whisper something that elicited her uncontrollable laughter. The sound in the crisp morning air was more vivid and jubilant than anything he had heard from her in months. It seemed like a corporeal strike affirming that her happiness resided elsewhere. Following the lovers' parting, marked by gentle caresses and contemplative gazes, Charles retreated from the window feeling that he had aged a decade within the span of an hour. The individual who awoke that morning had vanished, replaced by a sovereign who understood that love and loyalty are more fragile than crowns, and that those whom you trust the most may be the most treacherous. The daylight mask. The day's official duties seemed peculiar. Charles presided over cabinet sessions, embassy briefs, and trade negotiations with regal composure. The monarch seemed engaged, dignified, and inquisitive. His internal universe disintegrated. Charles flinched every time Alexander Hartwell entered the room to provide updates or counsel. He saw the man who was cohabiting with his wife skillfully portray his loving servant. Hartwell anticipated Charles's needs, offered shrewd political counsel, and maintained the courteous but familiar tone of their long-standing collaboration. His eyes exhibited no guilt, nor did his voice reveal any hesitance, indicating no awareness of the double existence he led, based on the personal betrayal of the sovereign he feigned to serve. Hartwell discreetly conveyed a ministerial management approach to Charles during a difficult economic policy discussion. Previously a symbol of service, the gesture has now become a grotesque infringement. He had confided in Camilla with Charles' exclusive secrets a few hours beforehand. The mask almost slipped off during afternoon tea. Camilla participated in a routine meeting to plan royal engagements. Charles was compelled to see his wife and her paramour perform professionally, which he saw as a grotesque mockery of their relationship. Camilla inquired of Hartwell on scheduling challenges with the same aloofness she showed towards senior staff. Hartwell exhibited appropriate respect that concealed their fervent morning meeting in the Rose Garden. Alexander has been indispensable in coordinating next month's state visit. Camilla informed Charles, her tone radiating appreciation for his outstanding work. How could we manage such complex logistics without his expertise and meticulousness? Charles almost asphyxiated on Earl Grey. The dual significance of her words struck him with force. Alexander exhibits meticulousness. It included discerning the king's availability, therefore presenting their opportunity. Admiration was like salt on an open, oozing sore. Charles said, "Indeed, Alexander has consistently exhibited exceptional diligence in his service to this family while attempting to steady his voice. His dedication is genuinely remarkable." The words felt bitter on his lips, each imbued with a stark irony they failed to see. Charles observed their micro-expressions, the almost imperceptible indicators of their hidden rapport throughout the interaction. An ephemeral glance that lingered excessively. Hartwell recognized Camilla's fidgeting fingers on the polished table. They grinned momentarily when they believed the king was absent. Upon discerning where to search, he discovered their connection ubiquitously. The most challenging revelation was their exceptional professional collaboration. They adeptly synchronized complex logistical arrangements and fulfilled each other's ceremonial etiquette terms. They established the public connection that Charles had always desired with Camilla. Instead, she established that connection with the individual, causing them emotional and professional distress. Camilla gazed at Charles as Hartwell exited the conference. Her empathy, gentle caress on his arm, and inquiries about his day seemed to be a callous pretense. He saw his wife, for whom he had waited decades to wed, and contemplated the duration of her performance in this role. For how long had she fulfilled the role of a devoted wife, while her heart and body were pledged to another covert inquiry? That evening alone in his study, Charles made a decision that contradicted his enduring longing for solitude and privacy. No one could manage this independently. The repercussions were too significant. Detective Inspector Sarah Mitchell, the formidable head of the Royalty and Specialist Protection Command, was summoned. Over years of exemplary service, Mitchell had established his reputation as a person of exceptional integrity and understated competence. He needs an individual with unequivocal devotion and prudence to comprehend this betrayal. "Your Majesty, this request is highly unconventional," D.I. Mitchell said neutrally, in response to Charles's solicitation for a private, unofficial investigation of his principal private secretary's behavior. "Report concerns regarding staff behavior via designated channels." Charles said, "Those channels are compromised, Inspector," his voice laden with revelation. "This circumstance necessitates absolute confidentiality. An individual associated with the royal family may have jeopardized personal and state security. Prior to initiating legal proceedings, I must comprehend the full extent of the matter." Mitchell maintained professionalism. However, her expression soured as she contemplated the potential outcomes. Alexander Hartwell's access level jeopardized national security. A principal private secretary with divided loyalties or a personal affiliation may disclose state secrets, sensitive diplomatic communications, and intelligence briefings. I require authorization to oversee communications, examine all security footage including that from restricted zones, and perform covert surveillance, Mitchell informed him, transitioning from advisory to operational mode. This inquiry necessitates a select verified staff capable of handling highly confidential material with trustworthiness. Charles said, "You possess all necessary resources," with a hollow tone. "Nonetheless, Sarah, this must remain distinct. Should this investigation be compromised prior to the revelation of the truth, the monarchy may face annihilation. Mitchell's proficient crew operated swiftly and unobtrusively for 48 hours. They developed a chronology of the incident and evaluated its security vulnerabilities. The revelation exceeded Charles's most profound fears. Security footage revealed that the relationship between Camilla and Hartwell was more profound than suggested by their text communications. For over 2 years, they convened at palaces, royal residences, and discreet hotels in London. Their deception was remarkably orchestrated and bold. The communication records were concerning. Hartwell disclosed confidential information on the king's itinerary, health, political opinions, and familial matters to external acquaintances using encrypted messaging platforms and disposable phones. The informal dissemination of such sensitive information constituted a significant security breach, notwithstanding the absence of clear evidence of foreign espionage. The finance department solved the puzzle. Mitchell's forensic accountants discovered Hartwell's offshore accounts receiving unaccounted payments. The substantial amounts were deliberately concealed. These payments may have constituted extortion, information exchange, or elements of a broader conspiracy, thus adding corrupt criminality to the profound personal betrayal. Charles experienced the dissolution of his former existence when D.I. Mitchell presented her early findings in a confidential briefing. The individual he entrusted with state secrets was constantly betraying him while engaging in infidelity with his spouse. His sweetheart had knowingly or unknowingly facilitated a security breach that may jeopardize the institution she had pledged to safeguard. The controversy became a matter of national security. Profound deception. King Charles began to experience the pressure of maintaining a public front while managing the escalating crisis. Courtiers attuned to the fluctuations of royal temperament saw the decline. During meetings, his sharp intelligence seemed dulled, and his once confident judgments were delivered with uncertainty. His psychological distress diverted his attention from discussions. State supper dishes are often neglected. He saw vacuous silhouettes from restless nights. Camilla, oblivious to her husband's comprehension, attributed his deterioration to kinship. She recommended that he abandon his work, exhibiting evident concern. "You have been exerting yourself excessively, dear," she said one evening, gently inquiring. "Perhaps we need to annul the Scottish obligations. Highgrove provides tranquil weekends. You seem fatigued." The irony was painful. Realizing she had seen his private secretary before dawn, and seeing her apparent dedication was distressing. He saw only warmth and genuine concern in her countenance while searching for deceit. He faced 2 possibilities. Either she was an exceptional actress, or she had so thoroughly compartmentalized her life that she deceived both herself and him. D.I. Mitchell's expanding investigation uncovered a grim truth. The evidence now warranted a re-evaluation of the case. This was an enterprise, not a solitary romance. Alexander Hartwell astutely used Queen Camilla's susceptibilities and her need for affirmation. What she perceived as love was a well-orchestrated psychological manipulation. Financial records connected Hartwell's enigmatic payments to a front organization associated with a covert international syndicate that engaged in espionage targeting political and commercial entities. Surveillance indicates that Hartwell clandestinely met with handlers outside the palace. Their communication patterns corresponded with significant political events and royal declarations. The conclusion was unavoidable. Alexander Hartwell was an operator, not a romantic. Camilla, yearning for recognition and validation, was inadvertently nurtured. Her vulnerabilities were meticulously identified, analyzed, and used. The friendship served as a means to infiltrate the monarchy and get confidential information. Charles's suffering intensified significantly after this disclosure. The Rose Garden's laughter, clandestine messages, and furtive glances during state assemblies now bear the ominous burden of espionage. He had also betrayed the crown. He was being subverted in the most egregious way by the person he entrusted with his counsel and confidence. An impeccable assistant was an impeccable betrayer. The devoted wife was an unwitting accomplice. The king confided in D.I. Mitchell alone in his study. The monarchy maintained its customary practices and traditions. Beyond the resplendent walls, the sovereign was shattered not by military forces or political turmoil, but by treachery among his own kin. The dispute. While the aircraft flew above somber clouds en route to Edinburgh for official duties, the royal compartment resonated with the persistent, subdued drone of the engines. In the sovereign's private cabin, the atmosphere was far from serene. King Charles sat resolutely opposite Camilla, his knuckles pale from gripping the polished wood of the armrest. His consciousness had weighed heavily upon him in silence for weeks. Silence could no longer be maintained. Camilla sipped her tea while speaking about a luncheon, a charitable function, and a service at St. Giles Cathedral. Charles hardly recognized her eloquent public address. His thoughts were consumed by his heartbeat. He spoke in a deep, deliberate, and frigid tone. "Camilla," he said, interrupting her contemplation. "Clear communication is key. I possess knowledge about a certain topic." The queen consort became still, teacup suspended. "Beloved, what do you imply?" Charles said. "I am aware of Alexander." The name descended between them like the weight of iron. Her visage was devoid of hue. Her trembling fingers placed the cup onto its saucer, which quivered. The engines constituted the only auditory presence for a while. "Shishiku lao leng jing. Charles Akau. Implore you," she murmured, her voice quaking with trepidation. "Not as you presume. An error. No one meant for it to evolve." Tears cascaded down her cheeks faster than she could remove them. "You have betrayed me," Charles said, his tone resolute but poignant. "It exceeds that. You have betrayed the crown, the establishment you pledged to protect. He entered our lives via you. You let him observe everything." Camilla wept with her hands covering her face. "I experienced solitude," she said. "I experienced a sense of invisibility." Alexander perceived my voice. "He resuscitated me. I assure you, Charles, I never anticipated it was a ruse. It seemed authentic." Charles scrutinized her, his heart a tumultuous arena of feelings. Her voice conveyed sorrow, but it proved unhelpful. She exhibited disloyalty, but she was also naive, deceived, and used in a scheme that was beyond their marriage. The humiliation was individual, but the peril was national. "Are you still unable to perceive, Charles?" insisted, his voice trembling with rage and desolation. "It was never affection. It was premeditated. He located you, used your doubts, and betrayed both this family and country. While you sought solace, he acquired information that may jeopardize the monarchy." Camilla wept loudly, clutching a damp handkerchief. "I overlooked it. I sought genuineness. I never intended to do you harm." Charles gazed out the window, his tears blurring the boundless clouds. He wanted to trust her, although regaining trust is arduous once it has been so profoundly compromised. The king and queen sat in sorrowful silence, one deceived and the other misled, elevated above the earth in the cabin's pressurized tranquility, acknowledging that their marriage had transformed into the theater of a broader struggle. The apprehension. The morning seemed deceptively tranquil. Buckingham Palace began its usual routine breakfast trays, the crisp footfalls of guardsmen and quiet morning arrangements. Amidst this ordinary facade, an extraordinary operation was in progress. D.I. Mitchell and MI5 collaborated to mitigate Alexander Hartwell's concerns until the appointed time according to the king's discreet directive. Charles adjusted his cufflinks with trembling hands in his bedroom. He was aware that the perpetrator responsible for this grievous injury would be apprehended within minutes. Each tick of the mantel clock resonated like a drumbeat, counting down to a dreadful, unavoidable outcome. The corridors next to the principal private secretary's office subtly shifted about 9:00 a.m. Plainclothes specialist operations officers assumed their positions. The nearest exits were meticulously secured by reliable royal security personnel. Hartwell persisted with his morning regimen at his workplace. He examined documents, transcribed notes, and composed briefing papers for daily sessions with the king. He demonstrated remarkable dedication to service. Charles detested seeing it. He reclined in his study, attempting to discern sounds from the corridor. D.I. Mitchell entered Hartwell's office, accompanied by two somber intelligence officers. While presenting the warrant, she addressed the claims under the Official Secrets Act with professionalism. Immediate Hartwell alteration. Charm and politeness vanished, replaced by a frigid, methodical stare. There was no amazement nor protest. A trace of resignation. He rose from his desk with effortless grace as if it were rehearsed. In the serene wood-paneled room, the mechanical sound of shackles constricting around his wrists seemed to signify the end of an era of trust. Camilla, astonished by the news received hours before, remained in her quarters. The man she believed loved her was an operative who used her emotions to disclose crown secrets. She grasped the shattered illusion as truth overwhelmed her. While doing their morning responsibilities, palace staff saw in dismay as Alexander Hartwell, the indispensable aide, was escorted through the corridors. Whispers transformed into gasps. The arrest of a senior courtier for treachery was exceptional. Mitchell verified with Charles over a secure link. A betrayer was apprehended. Rather than happiness, there was profound, vacuous misery. The person who established his agenda, offered advice, and stood with him throughout both public triumphs and private struggles was an internal adversary. The crown upon his head seemed more burdensome than ever, acutely aware of the risks undertaken and the extent of his flawed judgment. Alexander Hartwell was escorted from the castle to an unmarked vehicle with a featureless exterior. The image would always torment Charles, not as a depiction of a traitor, but as a breach of trust, a blemish on the institution he was destined to govern. Damaged diadem. Months passed. However, the wounds of betrayal remained unhealed. Notwithstanding a dense shadow, Buckingham Palace persisted in its opulent ceremonies and stringent traditions. The royal grandeur seemed diminished, as if the walls recalled the humiliation. Despite his status as king, Charles seemed transformed. The betrayal undermined his authority but did not remove him from power. He exhibited regal stoicism in public. He launched hospitals, hosted formal banquets, and spoke with respect. Nonetheless, the camera's unwavering focus captured his expressionless eyes. The world saw his humiliation, and no display could obliterate it. Previously calm and self-assured, his authority suddenly seemed tenuous. Camilla exhibited a grin at public engagements with him. However, their relationship was clearly fractured. They journeyed independently, linked just by duty. Many saw her as an emblem of the monarchy's frailty, rather than a narrative of late-life romance. She was endured, not relied upon. Within the confines of the palace, Charles experienced profound isolation. His study, once a sanctuary for contemplation, had transformed into a site of torment. He would remain seated at the window, gazing at the rose garden for hours, reiterating his findings. He was tormented by Camilla's exuberant laughter with another man. When he wore the crown on ceremonial occasions, it ceased to represent divine right or inherited sovereignty. It evoked his vulnerability. It demonstrated that supreme power could not shield an individual from suffering, and that the most significant threats often sprang from friends. The monarchy persisted as customary. The succession was secure, and governmental operations continued. Nevertheless, the people, and most acutely the king, questioned whether a monarchy so deeply marred by personal disgrace could really elicit the respect necessary for its survival. A king in distress, is it possible for him to still evoke national loyalty? He governed as a fractured sovereign. Despite gleaming under state illumination, the crown had an imperceptible fissure that only he could sense. He retained his throne. Nevertheless, in the isolation of the palace among the specters of his former beliefs, he saw that he had lost something much more precious. Thank you for watching the video. Please let us know your thoughts, and goodbye for now.